it would be more than fun, I can assure you.
No, amazing, amazing. So
I
I hope in Black Hat you don't come across shiny hunters, and you are able to make sure that your exposure to shiny hunters is limited, as limited as possible. I think that's a
absolutely.
pretty good segue for us to get started on our shiny hunters conversation. So yeah, I mean, I can see shiny hunters is making quite a big buzz in the last 6 months or 1 year, and it is certainly on top of mind of majority of the CISOs, even business organizations for that matter. So what can you tell us about shiny hunters? What should I do as a CISO security leader, and what should I know about shiny hunters? Over to you, Sarfraz.
Yeah. Is it okay if I share my screen? I have a few
Of course,
stuff to show about them.
please go ahead.
Share screen. Right. I'm getting too old for this. Um, the most famous dialogue on Zoom. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can
Right.
indeed.
Okay, so you can see this. Who is Shiny Hunters, right?
Yes.
So, like, let me start by this saying this, right? So, Shiny Hunters, it's not a group; it's a reputation carrying brand. It's a collection of people getting together. And they've kind of evolved in the history. One very interesting piece of information not many people know, but they are named after the Pokemon shiny hunting, right? They grew on Discord and raid forums, and then they negotiate over talks, Tutanota and Onion Mail. Their model is, first of all, they breach, exfiltrate, extort, and leak, right? Till now, they've not been doing encryption, pure leak, but that's going to change. What's really interesting about them is since August 2025, they have aligned with um, Scattered Spider Lapses Group, and so it's now called SLH, right? So the modus operandi is Spider gets in, Shiny Hunters steals and leaks, and Lapses amplifies. One very interesting thing about them, they've been operating since 2019. They have 300 plus named breaches and 3 billion plus records claimed. There's a bunch of impersonators who actually use the name. In case of Versal, we saw this, right? These are pure data reseller, right? Now, the interesting thing is, like, if you get breached by an impersonator, typically it would not prevent from shiny hunters to hit you again. I mean, one of the unsafe thing is, like, if you get breached by a group, typically they don't hit you again. But in this case, you don't know who's the imposter and who's real. So it's really like a double tap for certain customers. Um, in last 6 months, and this is where they have really shot to fame. This is talking about um, the SLH group, right? Started with the Anodot supply chain attack. Names like Rockstar, Vimeo, Zara got breached. Versal was very interesting, which was actually done by an impersonator. I think so. One of the biggest breach in recent history was the Canvas breach, which affected a lot of universities in the US, which was done through Oracle PeopleSoft, right? So a lot of big names over here, but very interesting. I think so. They are one of the most active group that we are seeing this year emerging.
So,
Uh,
Sarfraz, sorry to stop you there.
yeah,
I found something very interesting, in your previous slide and this one. One is impersonator, and the
yeah,
second aspect was around the fact that the claims are on per claim basis. There is no get out of free jail card for the victims. You
correct.
cannot claim that, oh, you breached me earlier, so do not ask for ransom, because
Correct.
it's not a group. It's multiple groups claiming to be shiny hunters, and then you have to pay each and every time. So that is
Yes,
pretty interesting.
especially for the impersonator, and that's making it all the more difficult for customers. Like, if the SLH groups breaches you, then it's still okay. But if the impersonator hits you, then for sure it's like a double whammy for you, you know?
Wow. Wow. So that means they are spread all over, right? It's not just one single thing. I mean, much like Logbit and Scattered Spider.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, please go ahead.
So the frightening thing about them is, they're escalating across different axes at once. In terms of their capability, like from 2019 to 24, they were mostly focusing on like snowflake credential thefts. 2025 used Salesforce voice phishing at industrial scale. Um, Towards 25, 26, they basically used OAuth supply chain cascades. And then really the PeopleSoft breach that they had in 2026, exploiting the 0 day, which is very unique because most people have defined TTP. This was something which they had not done before, which basically tells you that the capabilities is increasing exponentially. And then even in terms of the aggression, right? So initially they were more towards swatting and physical threats against executives and their family, DDoS, SMS flood, and sustained harassment of staff. We are seeing that they're also bringing the ransomware service, right? The Shiny Spider RAS. There are live Windows sample, and this will probably gain. There's a very good probability that this getting mainstream, and so they will enter into ransomware as a service going forward, right? And so what we are seeing is the regression is moving from pure theft towards encryption and extortion as a service. And the most important thing is their reach, right? Like, from targeting single victims, now they're targeting the whole sectors, right? Just in 2026, and let this sink in, right? Just in 2026, 400 million people across 40 organizations were breached by them. That is super significant, right?
That's a
That
massive
number
number.
is more than population of a lot of countries in the world. Um, you know, Education is definitely a prime sector. The canvas was 275 million records. And then you know through supply chain, compromising one vendor cascades into hundreds of them, which was the case of Anadot and Drift, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so what they do is the modus operandi is essentially using identity first attacks which bypass the EDR. They target supply chain compromises, which magnifies the blast radius. And then the combination of the three groups, like uh, paying one actor does not stop another one.
Exactly. And Sarfraz, just to share it with everyone, I used to do this presentation, one of my most popular presentation on debunking myths around ransomware. And my prediction was that by 2026, 2027, 90 to 95% of the ransomware attacks would not even involve encryption. And this is a great evidence where this is a ransomware attack. Encryption is nowhere involved. Data exfiltration is something that is driving ransom amounts, causing physical or physical extortion in terms of causing physical harm, threat to executives and the family members will also become one of the sources to high ransom demands. And that is what is very evident in Shiny Hunters also.
Absolutely. Ruthless and exploding exponentially.
Yep. I do remember those incidents as well where the threat actors would themselves report to the regulatory bodies that did you know that this particular organization has been breached? Did they report to you within the time frame or not? So
Yeah,
imagine, they are just not being attackers, they're also policing the victims at the same time.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Now, what is very interesting, Prateek, over here is I want to take anatomy of one breach, like the Salesforce breach, where it was a five-step credit loop. The first is identity acquisition, which was wishing through help desk, right? And then they registered the MFA device to maintain persistence. And they use SSO session to pivot from Salesforce to Office 365 to SharePoint and Slack. lateral movement, right? Where they ended up searching for confidential information, VPN data, and then they modified the Salesforce data loader, and they did like bulk exfil of SharePoint data, right? And then also did OAuth token stuffed API extraction. And the last thing was obviously they gave them a 72 hours timer to steal the money. You know what is the most frightening part of this entire um, chain?
Yeah. What is that?
If you look at step 1 to 4, none of it involves malware. And so there's no way your EDR is going to detect against it. And so how do you kind of protect? Like most people rely on detection and prevention mechanisms, right? Like either like firewall or endpoint security. And so that is the reason they have been so, successful and so devastating, right? And so they are basically leveraging identity and SaaS side, which is very difficult from customers to manage.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. That means definitely, you should go beyond just the detection and response controls. You should look at the vulnerabilities that they are commonly exploiting at this point of time.
Yeah. So to your point, like how do you protect, right? The first thing from customers' perspective is there are 4 pillars that we recommend. First is to deploy phishing resistant MFA, right? Like FIDO2 keys or passkeys for all workforce. The second is have some sort of SaaS integration governance, right? Whether it talks about OAuth token audit daily, allowing connected apps, removing mass export permissions for non-admin users. So very strong governance for SaaS application. The third is post-compromise detection, right? So things like looking at deletion of MFA enrolled emails or bulk downloads of SharePoint, which are PowerShell driven. And last but not the least is have a very critical service level of patching on internet-facing apps. This is where we see. So for most critical apps, people have like a 96 hours or a 7-day window, but have very aggressive service level on patching of internet-facing apps.
Absolutely. So, Sarfraz, you speak about a few uh, detection capabilities of stopping or detecting shiny hunters attack. You also spoke about some prevention controls. But how do we evaluate our exposure against shiny hunters? Because even though my environment may have certain vulnerabilities that are and the ones which shiny hunters are exploiting at this point of time, but what if I have certain security controls, network architecture, because of which the attack surface may completely be zero or minimalistic? So how do I calculate my exposure, real exposure?
Yeah, so I'll come to it, but before that, what I wanted to show is like how they will evolve in next 90 days, right? But like I said, 4 things which are super important. One, like I said, the first thing is deploy a phishing resistance MFA, have some sort of a SSPM or governance around your SaaS application, and then create specific rules for post-compromise detection and last, patching. If you purely rely on your prevention or detection and response tool, you're waiting for disaster to happen.
Exactly.
Does that answer your question, Prateek?
100%.
So this is very interesting. This is what our research team. So High Force Labs, as you know, is one of the most prominent threat research team in the world, looking after adversaries and specifically in vulnerability intelligence. So our forecast is, and then I just want to correct, like it's not just shiny hunters. It should be the SLH alliance in broad that we need to look at, right? And so what our lab is forecasting, where they are going to escalate next 90 days based on our deep study of the methodology, our studying of the actors in deep and dark web, The tradecraft maturity, where we are seeing the attack surface evolving, and the recently claimed access. The highest likelihood is, education sector attacks will continue. So if you are education sector, we would highly encourage them to look for or focus on prioritizing protection or reducing the attack surface against them, right? We are going to see more Salesforce App Exchange supply chain hits, right?
Wow.
Um, Drift and Gainsight establish the playbook, right? And so any app exchange published on Salesforce with broad OAuth scopes like analytics, AI assistant, right? Everybody wants to deploy AI assistant, but what comes along with it is like a broader OAuth scope, right? Marketing tools. These are viable vectors, right? So what we expect is a large scale OAuth cascade by Q3, right? So these two areas are where people really need to look at and audit themselves. Where we see also a good likelihood happening is, the evidence we saw of Chinese spider RAS to launch in a broader level, right? And so they had teased ransomware earlier, but it would move to uh, uh, a more broad line, data theft and um, encryption enabled double extortion, right? So this is one gap they had to, the Alpha Black Cat groups, right? And so we are expecting these attacks to happen in manufacturing or healthcare sector. And so I would be very careful and keenly observing if I'm in the manufacturing and healthcare sector to look at this the RAS tool, right? And then we also feel, um, you know, uh, the recent breaches of European Commission in March 2026 and CIC Vietnam in September 2025, a willingness to hit state-affiliated targets, right? So we expect more of EU agencies, mid-tier national governments, and large-scale NGO to receive extortion demands, testing the response calculus, right? So this is where we feel they're and so rather than saying that they are going to scale down unless they're disrupted by the law agencies, they're going to explode. And if you're in like any of these four things, I would definitely keep an eye on. So to your point, like, hey, how do I protect against this? So typically, what the conventional way how people protect against such attacker group, what do you do, right? So you get a threat advisory, you subscribe to some threat intelligence platform, you download a strategic brief around it, and then you ask your vendors to give you the IOCs associated with it, right? And then you would slice and dice the IOCs. Basically, if there's vulnerabilities, you'll tell your vulnerability management tool, the vulnerability management tool team to run for a scan. Take atomic IOCs, put it on your firewall, EDR, look for attack vectors, right? And then tell team to like do an SSPM audit,
Sarfaraz,
stuff like.
sorry to stop you there. I'm a big fan of seeing is believing.
Yeah.
So I am good with what you're saying, but let's see some things in action because
No, yeah, so I'm coming to that, right? So typically when you look at this entire process, right, like right from your threat research team downloading a report to involving your vulnerability management team to run a scan, to give your SOC team to upload the IOCs, and then involving different security team to either shore up the MFA and stuff. How much time do you think it takes for organization, and how many people get involved in this, right?
yeah, I mean,
So our research shows like from the time an organization consumes an intelligence to the time they action or close the attacker gap is anywhere between 3 to 5 days. And to close like the vulnerability loop is even higher, right? Because you don't fix vulnerabilities quickly. Now, one of the things that we dreamt on, and we made a core part of our platform, was making intelligence actionable. So if you had to kind of log on to our platform, you would go there and say like, "Hey, show me my exposure to shiny hunters," right? And so we can see, and this is just like one query I ran, and said like, like we have one asset which is critical. It's in production department. It is internet facing, right? And then has three of those vulnerabilities which Shiny Hunter uses to exploit, right? So three of the four vulnerabilities do exist, and it's internet facing, right? And it's live in production. And so recommended action would be like, patch or isolate this machine, review auth application on this particular system and the assets within the blast radius, deploy info stealer rule detection, right, on endpoint security tools, monitor Shiny Enter social engineering campaigns, right? So create specific rules on your SIM. And then more importantly, run some sort of, you know, red teaming or simulation specifically around their TTPs, right? So that's what we do. Now, what you can also do is like you would go if you're a customer, just say like, hey, like show me Shiny Hunter. I would go and so this is a case where we saw so two like the pretenders, right? So this is our strategic intelligence that we create, right? Where we say like what are the countries being targeted, the TTPs, what are the CVs, how they are acting, right? So this is great intelligence, right?
Yeah.
The MITRE
We
TTPs. Now, what
just
you
into
need to
action.
do is, if you're a customer, just go to alert details, and then you want to say like, "Hey, run a scan," right? So I want to specifically understand my exposure, so I can do an active exposure hunting on my platform. And then we saw that one asset, three vulnerabilities could be targeted, right? You can also see the timeline, like how long have they been active. And so the first time we saw was on 20th of April. So this actor's attack surface or threat exposure has been there in since April, and this is not uncommon, right? Um, and so you could do multiple things, like you could go to this vulnerability, get the details, and just say like, "Hey, do a remediation," right? Like fix it, go and patch it, right? So you could just assign it to uh, me, and then just say like um, change status, and then just say like automated patching, manual patching, whatever, right? That's one way of doing it. The other thing you can do is, you could also see more data points associated with it. Like I said, these are the IOCs. So I would download these IOCs and then feed to my EDR, my firewall, my detection prevention rules to closely observe. Our solution is also, very specific in terms of saying that, this instance is set up for healthcare, and so we can say that it's prioritized intelligence because it's both my vertical and geography. So this is more important for me. And last but not the least, I can run a simulation, uh, right, associated to check the efficacy of my controls. Like if I create a simulation, um, you know, like how would I be protected, right? So you could do that all in from the platform.
So you're
And
telling me I don't have to manually identify the attacks that Shiny Hunter, various groups under Shiny Hunters, they are launching. I can just find all the attack types in one single advisory. Is that what you're saying, Sarfraz?
absolutely.
Oh, wow. That makes my life a lot easier as a security analyst because I can't even imagine the kind of research you have to do initially to, first of all, identify all the different attack types, build that automation, then test it against my security controls in my environment, and then report it to my organization whether I'm exposed to shiny hunters or not. I think that research time has been cut to almost zero, if I'm not being impractical here.
Yeah, so what we see is typically the efficiency gain for our customer goes from days to hours and minutes. Like what I showed to you, typically saying, hey, we saw two major breaches. One was the Oracle EBS. If I'm a education sector customer, like I would just go there and say, like, hey, show me my exposure, like run a scan or do a remediation or run a simulation or download those IOCs, right? So it will take me less than 2 hours to do this. Versus what you do in real world, like download the intelligence, give the vulnerability team to your vulnerability management team, ask them to run it in your vulnerability cycle, right? That's like a 1 week of effort.
Yeah,
And then exec the IOCs, give it to your SOC team, right? Give a bunch of ERA rules for threat hunting. So it's very disjointed, it's very inefficient. And this is the reason attackers succeed, you know?
exactly. I mean, what I really liked about the fact that it's really democratizing the intelligence and access to technology and capability to every security analyst, every threat analyst, because you don't have to actually have you know, the, the same level, or, the entry barriers has been reduced significantly, which is making things a lot more easier.
Yeah, one of our design principles, Pratik, in the beginning was to consumerize cybersecurity.
Beautiful.
Democratize is great, right? Like you give access to a lot of people. The problem in cybersecurity really is dumbing it down, right? How do I increase operational efficiency?
Yeah.
Like, one of the biggest things I see in cybersecurity, like how people wear certifications as a badge, right? Like, and what it really shows is how difficult it is for people to manage cybersecurity. And that's a reason, analysts, everybody gets so overwhelmed because you need to have a certain amount of skill to operate and consume cybersecurity. And it should not be the case, right? The thing should be like, hey, there's an attacker. All I want to know is, do I need to be worried? This
Yep.
is what a CISO wants. Like, I wake up like, hey, what's my exposure to Shiny Hunter? Ask a CISO how easy it is for him to get that answer. It will take him a week to get that answer, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to simplify the entire user experience, not just Shiny Hunter. It could be something tomorrow, right? Any new threat emerging, like, do I need to be worried? What's my threat exposure and what do I need to fix it? These
Yeah.
are simple questions we want to answer.
Exactly. No, that's very interesting. That's very very indeed interesting. In fact, just to help everyone who is attending LinkedIn Live, we do have a very comprehensive report on shiny hunters. It goes much beyond what Sarfraz was able to explain today over the call, because it's a very short format call. So feel free to please scan this QR code that you see on your top left and download a full comprehensive report and let us know. We are more than happy. We have a large threat intelligence team who's ready to help you out in every way possible in getting any information that can potentially help you in your security operations. On that note, let me ask the
Yeah,
audience if you have any
sure.
questions.
Just one thing, one
Yeah,
correction. We don't have a LAT team. We have the smartest threat intelligence team.
I agree. I 100% agree. And please feel free to ask any questions. The comment section is open. You have Sarfraz Kazi, CTO and co-founder. We will be happy to answer. If there is something that we cannot answer right now, we'll definitely get back to you. We'll just take another 30 seconds to see if there is any question. So, Sarfraz, I see one question here is that how can they get access to this platform? Is there any way to have a demo of the platform to see if this helps them in their environment?
Yeah, I think so. What you can do is go to the website. There's a free sign up, and then we offer like a no cost risk assessment, like a threat exposure assessment, right? Just fill in, and it takes less than half an hour. Like if you want to understand your exposure to shiny hunters, all you have to do is go to the sign up platform, sign up, and within 30 minutes we can show you what's your exposure to attackers, including shiny hunters.
Amazing, amazing. I think this is the link we are talking about. I'm not sure. I think uh, the platform is not. Yeah, there is the link. Hypro/book a demo. I think it makes it easier.
Yep.
Amazing. On that note, thank you, Sarfraz, for your insights and your recommendations today. This was incredibly helpful. We are doing another LinkedIn Live very timely next week on how to fix the risk in a post Mythos world. AI is something which is, kind of a dual use, something which is of dual news nature, and everyone is wondering what kind of approach should I take to fix vulnerabilities in this AI world. So please tune in, please register yourself for this session next week, and we would have Dan, Crit, myself, and Sarfraz on the next LinkedIn Live.
Then the dawn.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarfraz. Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks everyone for joining today's LinkedIn Live of Fix the Risk. Have a good weekend. Bye.